Rhyme scheme is very much like the motion of a car. Rhyme scheme sets up tension and then releases tension or resolves that tension. But here is the thing. Every time we resolve rhyme, we create a speed bump, which is to say we create a moment of pause or stopping. And if we are constantly resolving our rhymes in rhyming couplets or even in rhyme schemes that close off the rhyme too quickly, we never achieve the kind of motion that is actually possible to achieve if we break out of rhyme scheme cliches.
It's important that we break down what that actually means. So, Kep, let's talk about rhyme scheme cliches and what they are and what their impact is.
So to break that down, the first thing we need to define is what a rhyme scheme is. So a rhyme scheme is really the pattern of rhyme that happens at the end of a line, which makes it structural rhyme. And structural rhyme tells us when an idea or a section has closed off and what kind of closure we have.
So we're not talking about internal rhymes, we're talking about really the very last word of each line. That's the focus.
That's right. And the other thing we're not talking about with rhyme scheme is rhyme type. Rhyme type is something different. So if I rhyme the word time with the word night, that is still a rhyme, but it's what's called an assonance rhyme, or broadly known as a slant rhyme. So that's rhyme type. That's not what we're talking about. Rhyme scheme is all about the pattern of rhyme that sets up an expectation that something's going to resolve its rhyme, and really rhyme scheme is about how we resolve that setup of rhyme.
So that explains what rhyme schemes are. What about this concept of cliches?
So a rhyme scheme cliche is a default rhyme scheme that a lot of songwriters will habitually default to unless we actively think about other options and other alternatives for rhyme schemes. So there are really two rhyme scheme cliches that people tend to default to. And those rhyme scheme cliches are the rhyming couplets, which we can define as AABB, where we're using letters of the alphabet to notate lines that rhyme with each other. So a rhyming couplet, two lines that rhyme with each other, we would call that AA. And if we then write another two lines that rhyme with themselves, we would call that BB. So that's our first rhyme scheme cliche, AABB. The second rhyme scheme cliche is ABAB. So that's alternating rhymes. And again, it's a little more open of a rhyme scheme than AABB, but it's again just a rhyme scheme cliche in the sense that it's something that people default to over and over again, and often without thinking beyond those two patterns of rhyme schemes, people might just continue to write songs that have nothing other than those two rhyme schemes for their entire lives. Let's actually talk a minute about rhyme scheme notation. So understanding the notation is really going to help us talk very quickly about song analysis and help us write in certain rhyme schemes. So this is best demonstrated through examples.
We can see here, again, focusing on the last word of each line, that we have girl, you, knew, do.
So when a line is unrhymed, we are going to give it the notation X. So our X lines are lines that don't rhyme at all.
And so that word girl at the top is unrhymed with anything else, so it gets the X notation. And then we have a series of A rhymes. So you, knew, do all rhyme with each other. We get A. As we move on to the next part of this verse, we have boy, seen, been, clean. Again, boy is unrhymed with anything. It gets an X notation, but we have a new sound in play. So the seen, been, clean is obviously a different sound to the you, knew, do. And so it gets the BBB notation. So XAAA, XBBB makes up that rhyme scheme.
If we were to look at the entire song lyric, anytime a new rhyme sound is introduced, we'll move on in the letter of the alphabet. However, if a familiar rhyme sound reoccurs, something that we've already heard before, we will give it the notation that we gave it before. So let's say, for example, in that Sam Smith song, in the bridge section, that we had the sound E. We have een, clean, seen, been, mean. That E sound, well, we're going to revert back to the B rhyme analysis to show that the ear is going to hear that connection back to that familiar sound.
And that's really useful when you're looking at, your lyrics laid out on an entire sheet. You can actually look down and see where you've reused certain rhyme sounds throughout the whole song, regardless of what section it's in. Now that we've discussed what rhyme cliches are and how they work, Now that we've looked at how rhyme notation works, it's time for us to show you 3 of our favorite rhyme schemes that are alternatives to some of the more common ones.
So let's start by showing how this would work in an example lyric, just using the end line rhymes. For example, what we might have is bone, home, stone, sting, night, alive, try, bring. So again, we have to imagine that these words happen at the end of the lines of lyric. And part of the reason that I love this rhyme scheme, and we're going to see this in an example song in a moment, is that it's a true 8-line section. So this breaks out of that 4-line, or even with AABB, those are 2 little fragments that resolve internally. So we're breaking out of this 2-line or 4-line system and really building a longer arc of tension and then release. So the fact that we have this consecutive rhyme pattern, AAA, that then breaks the pattern with B, that B rhyme becomes a dangler. It's like an open door or a question mark. That is the thing that suddenly needs to be resolved. And what happens is we don't resolve it straight away. We restart the pattern with a new rhyme sound, C, 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 but in recreating that consecutive rhyme, it builds the expectation that the pattern is going to resolve symmetrically. And that's exactly what we do in this rhyme scheme. And it turns out if you create that longer arc of tension, you leave that dangler and then restart the pattern in a way that indicates a promise. The promise that it is going to resolve in an expected way. When you do resolve, the resolution is actually much more impactful and much weightier than a simple ABA rhyme scheme.
If we go back to the original car on the highway metaphor, we've essentially taken out one of the speed bumps. The speed bump is now coming in after 8 lines. We've taken out that one after 4, which would have slowed everything down at the halfway point. But this sort of allows the momentum to build and then pause at that 8th line.
Exactly.
1, 2, 3, 4.
On the football pitch, they're throwing high kicks, building human pyramids, and the crowds all cheer. But you and me, we hide away from the hit parade where a different kind of cliche smoking other ideas.
The second rhyme scheme we're going to focus on here is ABBA. And a beautiful song that uses this rhyme scheme is Sweet Baby James by James Taylor.
There is a young cowboy, he lives on the range. His horse and his cattle are his only companions. He works in the saddle and sleeps in the canyons, waiting for summer, his pastures to change. So now here's an alternative version of that verse where we are stabilizing the rhyme scheme and turning it into an ABAB section.
So this is really using one of the rhyme cliches that we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
Okay.
There is a young cowboy, he lives on the range. His horse and his cattle are his only companions, waiting for summer, his pastures to change, as he works in the saddle and sleeps in the canyons.
Don't like it.
No, I don't like it either. One of the reasons I don't like it is probably because it's unfamiliar, but I do think that it is also about how good the original feels, how right it feels, how that choice of A, B, B, A has a perfect relationship with what the lyric is actually about. And if we look at the lyrics, he's creating a picture of a character who is in solitude, who wants things to be different, who's waiting for the season to turn so that he can find connection and community and not be so alone. And that sense of solitude and yearning is so beautifully brought out by the A-B-B-A pattern. It's unbalanced and unresolved. And when we turn it into that balanced section, the A-B-A-B rhyme scheme, it just feels way too stable and way too resolved for a character and an emotion that has so much yearning and so much instability inside of it.
As we start to collect more rhyme schemes to use, once we break away from the rhyme cliches, we're going to start having all of these different options to choose from. It's a very reasonable question to have. How do I choose which rhyme scheme is appropriate for my song or for this section of the song? And I think what Kepp's just talked through there with James Taylor, it's a beautiful demonstration of choosing the rhyme scheme that is serving the narrative or serving the mood or the feeling of the song. And you hear that longing and that yearning in the lyrics. It makes perfect sense to take that unstable feeling in the lyrics and serve them with the appropriate rhyme scheme that is unstable, that is unbalanced. The third rhyme scheme we want to focus on, we're calling Last Line X. And we're going to look at a couple of examples with this one. The first being Jeff Buckley's Lover You Should Have Come Over. So we hear Jeff Buckley building momentum with this chorus, and he does it with a sequence of 3 A rhymes. I'll wait for you and I'll burn. Will I ever see your sweet return? Oh, will I ever learn? So we have those 3 in a row. And what's beautiful about that is I think it builds that sense of anticipation that we've been talking about. It builds a real, heightened sense of where is this going? Where is this going to resolve, or how is it going to resolve? And then he hits us with 2 lines that are essentially unrhymed from anything else. Oh, lover, you should have come over. It's not too late. Using rhyme scheme to create an expectation and then break that expectation, it feels like it is too late. It feels like, he's not meaning what he actually says. There's some irony in the lyrics. But also it creates this kind of language that you would expect to hear someone use on the phone if they were just calling a lover or calling a friend. And so this teaches us, I think, a really valuable thing about rhyme scheme. When you are using rhyme scheme, you are deliberately packaging your lyrics and your language to be delivered to the ear in a particular way. You're seeking an effect. And that in itself, tells the audience, well, this is a song. I'm hearing a song that's been carefully put together and carefully structured. When you use unrhymed lines as a contrast to those rhyme lines, you switch to this very conversational, everyday language kind of mode. And it's a beautiful effect, especially when following the repetition of those 3 lines in a row.
We can also see that really clearly in the Sting and the Police song, Every Breath You Take. So that last line, I'll be watching you, is a refrain line, which means it's a line that repeats in all of the verse sections, but that refrain line is unrhymed. And it's actually the fact that it's unrhymed that draws an extra spotlight around it, but it happens after this sequence, this consecutive sequence of really tight rhymes, right?
And it really leaves us hanging. It leaves us dangling and in a place of uncertainty in a way. And that's the beauty of it. It's unresolved, it's unstable. And in these examples, it really serves the narrative or the lyrical message of the song. 2, 3, 4.
Out there, the crowds cry out for the human pyramid, but we don't like it that loud. You and I are the backstage kids, so come over here and light me up.
We've created this video using selected scenes and highlights from our brand new online course, The 5 Most Powerful Songwriting Exercises Revealed. A course that guides you practically and in great detail through 5 songwriting exercises that have had a profound effect on both Keppie and I and have shaped us as professional songwriters over the years. Trust us, these exercises will help you write better songs. So if you're interested, check out the Udemy link below.